slowly, just with chords. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies. Now it's the slide up. For amber waves of grain, special chord, resolve. Now that's the first phrase or the first line of the lyrics. It's, if this was to be written in a 4-line thing, this is the first phrase. Let's do it again. Slide together, together, G, special chord, D. I put myself in a different part of the song. Now, starting in line 3, it's almost the same thing. Now I finish here, and now I've moved myself out of first position where my fingers each have a home place, because I know I'm going to need all these fingers here. Now I have my E at the 799, and then the 034 is also an E chord, E7. And that gets me to the A bar chord at the 5th fret, which is in the first measure of the bottom. Oh, I guess in yours it goes on to the next page. So this is where if you'd print it out, you'll have everything with you. Let's start at the top of the page again, and then get ready to move to the second page. Together, together, G, special chord, D5. Now, once we've gotten to that A, you can see that the rest of the measure fills out by just using the bar chord. I don't have to change that hand at all. I lift a finger up so I can play the 7 note, which is, I'm not playing the 7th fret, I'm playing the note that's already there under the 5th fret, but it's the 7th of the chord. The G is part of an A7 chord. And then I have to put my finger back down on a D. Now, if I'm reading melody notes, this is the D I usually go to at the 3rd fret on the B string to get that same note. But it's doubled right here on the string next to it. And I don't want to get out of position here to then go and get to this G chord up here. So the voicing I'm using of this chord is like I would for the D here, but I'm using all the open strings I can. So it sounds very interesting because I have the G in its home position, and then I've got a D that's higher, and then it goes down to the B, and then the high B. And this shape is going to work as I come down. Now for the F sharp diminished, I'm only playing 3. I've got 3 strings I'm touching. Those are the only strings I'm playing. So if I strum, I'm going to get an open B that I don't want to hear. So I'm doing a pinch that omits that particular note. And then I'm at E minor 7. that much. Go back to the A-shaped bar chord. One more time. A-shaped bar chord. Going on. This is like a D7 shape that we're used to here, but it's a D7 that doesn't have an F sharp in it. 5-3-5. And a nice little walk up in the on the D string. And now we're in our home position, but we're playing, we need the G note, so it's a C shape with an A, or a pinky, dropped on the high E string that gives us a G. That's a nice walk down there. G, D, F sharp, and then E minor, 7. I just want to, we've walked our way through it. We've talked through the chords in the up the neck shapes, and we've walked through it, and I've talked about some of my strategies and why I made the choices I did. Now, if you have a question about this, feel free to ask it, and I'll do my best to respond. But let's go back to the beginning now. Now if I want to pick up the tempo a little bit, now the fingering patterns that we did earlier is what I start, as I develop other songs, I start filling it in. So this moves us out of our home comfort place. All I'm doing when I'm doing the other stuff, I'm keeping these shapes in there and I'm adding more with my right hand. So we do have a couple of questions. So let's talk about those. The first question is, do I use any specific hand warm-ups? So we've talked about some exercises that I've shown in the past. I'll do that again, and I talk about these in my lessons. I think in the fingerstyle lessons, and maybe also in the beginning lessons. I can't remember if it's in both locations. But just remembering that your hands are connected. There's not really muscles in your fingers. You have a lot of tendons that are going to the different fingers, and they're pulled through the carpal tunnel, which is why those things happen. And when there's too much repetitive stress and things like that, that can get inflamed, which causes the carpal tunnel problems that we can have. So what we want to make sure to do is make sure that everything here is loose and not tense and tight. I have a Handmaster ball that I use, which does isometric exercises. So when I close, that we're used to, but when I open up, it also it opens these here. So there's a couple of those things that I do. And then there's the praying hands, where I'm going back and forth like this, keeping my shoulders straight, but letting all the stress or the stretching happen in here. Then these exercises come from sword fighters. 90-degree angle, 90-degree angle, 90-degree angle down. Now bring your hand as if you're going to have your pinky touch your nose. The only way to do that is to do this. You're not going to do it. But just twist, because what you're doing is stretching all around in here. Let this be self-limiting. Breathe. When you do it, after that has gotten to be nice and stretched, then turn your hand over. Keep your shoulder the way it is, but turn your hand over so your palm is facing the opposite direction. Use your other hand to stretch all your fingers. You can really feel this now in the front of your arm, your lower arm. Don't forget your thumb. And I do a little pulling on that. My chiropractor will hold with both hands to get and give a little shake to get all my carpal bones released when they get tense. And then do that with the other side. So down first, 90 degree, 90 degree, 90 degree, and then toward your nose. Breathe, and then rotate so that it's facing away, and use your other hand to stretch. And of course, we're doing both sides because both sides have work to do. The one final thing I like to do is put my palms together and my first knuckles of all my fingers. And can you see that space that's in there? I can just see the camera through there. You want to try to make that space go away. You may or may not be able to do that. But what it's doing is stretching in here, which is an additional stretch that didn't happen. So those are some exercises I do to get my fingers warmed up. What if I'm struggling to reach all the chords? The question you're going to ask yourself is the struggle because these are just unfamiliar to me? Or is the struggle because I don't know where I am on the fretboard? Or is it because my fingers won't actually make the reaches? The chords that I chose for this don't have long stretches. The G is irregular. Now some people do have trouble reaching around with their thumb, and so they'll use a finger. They'll change the finger and use the first finger over the top. That's fine. I'm using a thumb to do it because it's more convenient for me. I can keep this finger planted. And for me, it's easier to move this finger over from the 2nd fret over to stay in the 2nd fret, then to have my 1st finger go there, my 2nd finger kind of come back. But that also works. You need to find what works for your hand. And then when I'm playing this chord, it's a tight shape, but it's just I was talking about how I formed it and how I think about it, because now it's a shape. I can just put it down. I'm not thinking 4-5-4-5, but I am thinking shape. Diminished 7 shape, put here. It's not a diminished chord right there. And then these shapes, the D moved up. Those are mostly just getting used to what the shapes are. And I want to introduce these here so that you can start seeing how they connect and how you might use them. They're also useful for chord melody style, because as I play, I want this melody note, that melody note, that melody note, and then the bar chord A. I want to not forget that that's available to me. So these are not, I don't think, the difficult chords. They're unfamiliar chords. And the only way the unfamiliar becomes familiar is to do it a lot. And what I would do is circle the places on your page where you say, okay, this is an unfamiliar, this is unfamiliar. Play those things more. In my 5-finger practice regimen, I tune up, I warm up with anything. Then I do the hard part. The chords that you're having trouble reaching, that's the hard part. Then go play the easier part. Then put it all together. And that could be something you can memorize, which should become your warm-up. Now this question, can I review the finger-picking style sequence I'm using with my right hand? I do have a go-to finger pattern. I can't remember if in my lessons I have that called that, so you can search, but in the fingerstyle lesson, and I do talk about it. It's where my home position for the fingers I'm going to use in the right hand, and this is a right hand kind of question, is my first finger is going to play the G string, 2nd finger the B string, 3rd finger the high E string. My thumb is going to mostly play the low E, A, and D. We have done some arrangements in this class where these fingers move over a set of strings because they need to for a reason. But that means, even though I'm quarantined right now, I do go to the grocery store every now and then. So I can move my hands out of my home position to go to the grocery store because I need to. And then I come back. So that is what I'm assuming. Now, my thumb is hopping from the low E to the D string. As I'm doing this, that's my kind of go-to position. So my thumb is popping back and forth, and I usually go to my 2nd finger, thumb 2, thumb 1, thumb 2, thumb 3. So that's usually what I'm doing. Thumb 2, thumb 1, thumb 2, thumb 3. However, my thumb is doing the steady thing, any one of these in any pattern, which is why I have 54 thumb builder exercises to work on so that I get used to all these different possible combinations. So that's the sequence I'm using. So there is another question. How do I make a basic chord sound more exciting? And I'm going to guess that you mean by that more interesting. So if I have a C chord, this is in the key, that we're using the key of G. So let's use G as our home chord because that's where we are. If I add one finger, it's still the home position. Oh, we're in Somewhere Over the Rainbow now. Just going from that D to the B. Sorry, when I hear something like that, it just takes me down the path. Now, what can I do? So by alternating what I'm doing with my thumb, everything I did there was all using this chord shape and lifting something up, putting something down in the shape I already was. So that's what I would explore to make your chord sound interesting in C. Find out what chord is next to it where I can keep most things next to each other and lift up something, hammer on, pull off. So that's what I would think about an answer to that question. I would take something away and put it in, I'd add something, and keep my chord shape as close to familiar, as close to where it was as I can. Now let's run through the song again. For those of you who had a chance to do that, this might feel more comfortable this time. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of green, fancy chord, oh, purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with power, hope from sea to shining sea. Now, this is not complicated, it's unfamiliar. This is probably the most unfamiliar chord. I want to see if you can notice something. The reason I chose this and I like it is because the first finger and the pinky don't have to do anything different than just slide. So here is a 3-finger chord, a 3-finger chord that just moved, slid down. The difference was the first finger didn't go 2 frets as it slid down, and then we're open in the middle. But the first and the third, the pinky are the same locations that they were on the same strings. So I hope you have fun with this one. I have another one that I'd like us to take a look at that will bring us back into our home position, but it has a different challenge with it, and that's Beautiful Dreamer. This is a tune from the 1800s by Stephen Foster. It's also in 3/4 time rather than 4/4 time. So the challenge here is because we're in C, our melody is mostly buried inside of where we normally play our C shapes. But we want to have the waltz feel, the pa-pa. So sometimes what I'm playing that's backup is actually pitched higher than where the melody is. And so that's why I have to be very careful that I don't play those notes louder. And that reach right there is probably the hardest thing in the whole piece. That octave walk up is really fun. It takes a little bit of coordination because one string is always open, but it's never the same one next to each other. You have to do a little bouncing back and forth. And then at the finish, so this is purposefully not filled out a lot so that we can keep the waltz flavor, the dancing flavor of the tune present with us. This is one of the ones that was in the hit parade. It was very, very popular and sold tons of broadsheets. That's what music didn't used to come in books. It came in broadsheets, and that was the first mass distribution of music, was writing, and people would tour to sing the music for people, and then they'd pay for the music. And this is one of those. It uses far less chord shapes than America the Beautiful because it's less chromaticized. The melody does have the... It has a few passing tones that are the half steps that aren't part of the C scale. And they show up on not an important beat, not the one. And so it's not necessary to make the whole chord shift to match them. So there is a question, could I talk about some classical pieces? And I don't know exactly what would be most helpful in discussing that, but being able to play the classical exercises, classical repertoire, I learned from the Carcassi guitar method. This is one of those pieces that I end up using as a warm-up a lot. That's a prelude in C by Matteo Carcassi. And that method has been in print for a very long time. It was the book that my friend who stopped playing guitar gave to me when I was a teenager. He loaned me his electric guitar and gave me this book of classical. I was so lost, so confused, I didn't quite understand. But what I learned was, there was no tablature, it was all musical notation. I learned how to read the classical musical notation if there were no little bars or Roman numerals beside the musical notation. That meant I was in the home position. But if it started saying Roman numeral 2, that would be the 2nd fret, 3 was 4, and I began to see that the Roman numerals helped me see what position I was going to be in to play this, their suggestion of where it would be best for this to happen. And so there was a couple of clues like that that were not explained in their introduction, although to be fair, I probably didn't read the introduction. I'm somebody who doesn't usually do that until after I've dug into it and then go back and read the introduction. It's like, oh yeah, this answered all the questions that came up over there. What I've given you in relation to classical guitar pieces are the first time through a piece of music. You'll notice that when I went back and played America the Beautiful several times, it became faster, it became a little more fleshed out. My fingers were doing more while I were incorporating what had been there before. I was changing the rhythm a little bit. That starts to be more the classical development of a theme. So classical music tends to take seriously, we're going to develop this theme. We're not going to play the same thing 3 times. It's going to be different each time. And what we're doing here is we're going to get to that in a couple of weeks. We're going to start developing tunes and adding more so that we can see what happens over the course of learning a piece and then developing it. Because that is an important part of playing melodic fingerstyle. And classical pieces, if you're doing if you're working through a many-page classical piece, whether it's a Bach lute piece that's been transcribed for guitar, or a Carcassi, or a Fernando Sor, I'm going to forget some of those big classical names, or like Pete Huttlinger, or some other fingerstyle player that is a contemporary person whose tablature you're reading. That's where we're starting and just going through it. And they often have written in the development of the piece. Now let me play through Beautiful Dreamer again. And you can play with me. Let's start at the beginning and we're going to go through it 3 times. So the thing to remember is that when we play through something, we want to do enough repetitions so that we're not just into the rhythm of playing through and stopping. We also, if we play many times, we're less likely to stop and fix things because we have our eyes focused on the goal of getting to the end of the piece so we can start over and do it again, and say this is the number of times we're doing it, rather than did I get every piece perfect as I was going through it the first time. My experience is, as I give myself that number to work on, I do much better at getting accuracy. So here we go. At the beginning, 1, 2, 3. 3, 1, ready, play. I missed a couple there. Beginning. I fixed that spot I've had problems with before. My mind wandered. Beginning. There were a couple of times in there where the song, sometimes I get into a song and it sucks me in, and then I forget where I am and where I am in the song. That's one of the things I live for, actually. I want to be so inside the music that I don't know that I'm outside and breathing. So it's maybe not so helpful for teaching, but it's an experience I'm actually looking forward to. Now let's go back to America the Beautiful, where we are in 4/4 time. And we're going to go through this. We're going to go through this 3 times now. Okay? 1 and 2 and 3 and... Same thing happened. I was in Washington State there for a minute. Here we go, second time. Beginning. I did a special 4/1 ending, plagal cadence ending. It's a beautiful tune, just in time for Memorial Day for the States is our holiday. If you're in Canada, you can do Victoria Day, whatever tune that is. I don't know what a Victoria Day tune is. But I encourage you to try something like this. This is the kind of thing, because we were in the key that we were in, we had to move out to do that half of the song. The Beautiful Dreamer, we didn't have to move out of the first position in order to play that song, except for maybe one note. So the comparison of the two is part of what I want you to see today. It is possible to move Beautiful Dreamer out of the first position, and I'm currently working on that, and it will be done when it's done. And I'll share it with you when I can. But right now, it's waiting. So that's coming. That's just a preview. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask them. If your questions come later, you can always write them to me at JamPlay. In the community link, you can find me and ask the questions there, or join me in the live Q&A. I do them Monday and Thursday. What kind of guitar is this? This is a Husson Dalton, Hussdalton. They're a company out of Stanton, Virginia. And it looks like Staunton, but it's pronounced Stanton, Virginia. And this is their DS model. The slope-shouldered. It's a dreadnought, but with a slope shoulder instead of the hard shoulder. And radius top. And extra large sound hole. It's an homage to the Gibsons of the 30s and 40s. And this is the one I was looking for when I was looking to fall in love with a guitar. And where it went, but I think I'll find it. Can we talk a little bit about Materna, the title this song was based on? I wish I knew more. That's a great question. I'm going to have to do some research, but I'm sure that you can do it too. Let's see who's fastest. It's a hymn tune, it says. Let's see, Materna hymn tune. The music was composed by the church organist and choir master Samuel A. Ward at Grace Episcopal Church in Newark, New Jersey. So that's what I know. Let's see. He had originally written this tune for a different hymn, O Mother Dear Jerusalem, in the 1880s, and it wasn't combined with this poem until the 1910s. So that's where the tune came from. He wrote it for the words that he chose the tune name based on the words that he had written it for originally. So Wikipedia is our friend. So thank you, everyone. It's been good to be with you. Again, like I said, if you have questions, you can type them to me in the community part of Jam Play, or come and visit me in a live Q&A on Monday or Thursday. And I'll be glad to talk with you then. Until then, I'll see you next time. Thanks everybody backstage who makes this possible. And thank you for tuning in and being a part of this and making music an important part of your world. Bye.